latest quilt. I have used the Tree of Life Liberty collection, which is quality quilting cotton and is a much more affordable price than some of the other types of Liberty fabric. So it's about £16.50 a metre, and I made this whole quilt just using one fat quarter bundle of all 9 of the prints that I have in this collection, which are these. And you could use this same pattern with any fabrics. Use up your fat quarters. I'll literally just use fat quarters, and I wanted to see how big I could make the quilt using just fat quarters. It's about 112, 115 centimetres, not quite square because the hexagons don't end up being exactly square, but I think you'll agree it's really effective. It's a lovely size quilt, and because there's no set pattern, you can upscale this or downscale this with however many fat quarters you have. I've got a lot of plain organic cottons as well, so you can easily bulk this out with some coordinating plain fabrics as well and add a bit more of a contrast. So how I created it, you can't really tell, I hope you can't tell from here, that they're actually not full hexagons. What I've done is I have created a hexagon, half hexagon template with my husband using our 3D printer, and I've done a few versions of this to perfect it. But I'm finally happy with this one, and this is what's helped me create this quilt, so I thought I would talk you through how I've done that. So these are made up of half hexagons, and they've literally just been paired up next to their coordinating colour, so it looks like a full one. It means you don't have to do any hand stitching. That is the key here, because I don't know about you, but hand stitching is my least favourite thing. It shouldn't be, because I love sewing and creating things, but to see a quilt come together really quickly is just really satisfying. So that is why I have created it with my husband. So the first thing you need to do is iron your fat quarters. I don't know about you, but when it comes to quilting, I don't pre-wash my fabrics. I quite like the look of a quilt when it's been washed, and it feels that just like it looks used, a little bit crumply. I actually really like that from my quilts. Your personal preference, whether you want to pre-wash your quilting fabrics. They don't do an awful lot of shrinkage. I would always pre-wash if I'm making clothes. So I made this nail dress with one of the other Liberty collections as well. So the quilting cotton makes great dresses too. Always pre-wash for clothes, up to you whether you do it for quilts. But prep your fat quarters however you prefer. You definitely need to iron them. So once you have done that, we just need to create some strips from these. Use a quilting ruler. So I always use a really long quilting ruler and a rotary cutter. And you need to make the strips the same width as your template. So this one is 3¼ inches. Once you've done that, hopefully you can see what I do next is just use this to cut the half hexagons out, and it just makes it so speedy and satisfying. Once you've done all the main ones, I have then gone in and taken the 1/4 inch seam allowance off as well. Doing that little bit there isn't necessary, but it does help later on when it comes to piecing. It took a while for me to come up with a layout that I was happy with. I always try and go with some kind of pattern, but it just didn't work. So it's all a bit random. So place your fabric however way you prefer the layout, especially if you're not using the exact same fat quarters. So just have a play around with it. But take a picture, because it is so important that these go back and get sewn in the right order, because otherwise you're going to lose the whole effect. So you can refer back to it. That's how I do it. If you prefer, you can obviously label them with numbers and letters and things, but for me I always just like to take a picture. So once you are happy with your layout, you then need to start sewing it together. So you need to sew the columns first, and you'll end up with lots of really nice neat columns, which you then need to lay next to each other and then sew all those columns together. along the top you're going to end up with, it's not going to be exactly straight, but I didn't trim those at this point. I decided to do that once I'd finished quilting. Now it did then take me a while to decide how to do the quilting. I left it for a little while ready to go, but I just ended up doing some random free motion because I felt like it knitted the fabrics together, and now I just find that process really therapeutic. And when it's such a busy print, I don't think it matters. You don't want to detract from the print either. So having something really detailed, I just didn't think it needed it, to be honest. When it came to the backing, this ended up being slightly wider than a standard bolt of cotton. So a standard bolt of cotton generally is about 110, 112 centimetres wide, and this was just short of that. But when I had cut these back quarters, I did end up with like 2 or 3 inches left at the end. So what I have done, as I will show you now, is I used actually a William Morris fabric for the backing because I thought the colours went really nicely with it. But I used those leftover bits to just add a really small border either side of the backing, and that just made that fabric that little bit wider. Used up some tiny bits I probably would have left in my stash for years and years, and it meant that I didn't have to use more of the backing fabric as well, so there was no need for pattern matching or anything like that. So that was my trick. That's what I did to make the backing a bit wider. Then it came to binding it. I decided to use the green, it's Diana Blossoms, I think it's called, the green, but obviously you could use whatever you wanted, whether you buy your binding, whether you make it yourself. I always make it myself, and when I'm quilting I never cut the binding on the bias either because it's just straight. So that was 2.5 inch binding, which I have sewn to the front and then hand stitched to the back, and then my quilt was finished. It was really quick. I think if I'd done the quilting and just kept going, I probably would have done it in a couple of days, obviously in between other things. So yeah, it was very satisfying. The fabrics are beautiful. This pattern works really well with very small busy prints. So Liberty prints are ideal because you want it to be achieved. You don't want people to know that they're only half hexagons, but when it's such a busy pattern, you don't notice it, especially from a distance. You just can't tell. So what probably wouldn't work on really large patterns. So be careful when you're picking a fabric. Use plains, use busy ditzy print like I have. And if you do give it a go, I'd love to hear from you. So please share your pictures and let me know what you think in the comments.